This is episode 3 of the Air Hug Community Podcast. Welcome and a great big air hug to you. I'm your host, Judy Arazosa. Here on the Air Hug Community, we share conversations and stories with guests and myself that inspire us not to just survive, but to thrive. We dive into topics such as relationships, habits for better health, and how you see the world. Whether you are a mother or an other, the Air Hug Community is here to remind you that improving the lives of others will undoubtedly improve your life exponentially. Welcome to the Alcohol Talk. Okay, so today in episode 2 on the Air Hug Community, we're going to talk about alcohol and body composition. Wait, this is episode 3. So it's interesting because this has been a topic of discussion that comes up literally every week at Grateful Fitness for the last 10 years or even longer. And so it's no surprise if you think about it. So alcohol goes back to biblical times, right? Those of you who have looked at the Bible at any length of time at all, or even seen a picture of the Last Supper. The Last Supper was all about breaking bread and enjoying wine. There's numerous Bible stories where wine is a central factor in part of, especially in traditional celebrations, going back to wedding celebrations in the Bible. Wine has always played a big part of it. You know, Jesus is credited for turning water into wine. So the point is, wine is firmly established in human culture as something that's very traditional and customary and things that people do socially together. Okay, so wine, we know, is, as like my husband likes to say, a social lubricant. So, and, you know, think about this over the years. You know, there are many people who have made entire careers out of different types of alcohol. There are serious collectors of both wine and spirits. Some people have entire rooms dedicated in their home to wine. There are entire stores, obviously, dedicated to an entire companies that support, you know, millions and millions of people, you know, on the business of alcohol consumption. And so it's not to be taken lightly. So what, on the other hand, there are some very well documented, negatives associated with alcohol consumption, right? So as with everything, there's the good and the bad. So, you know, we keep things very simple around here. So we're not always binary, but today we're going to talk about, you know, or right now I want to talk quickly about some of the negatives associated with alcohol consumption. You know, obviously it's associated with decreased performance, mental impairment. It's responsible for numerous deaths related to motor vehicle accidents. It's very addictive for some. It can be very detrimental to our liver and to blood pressure and to developing diseases like diabetes. So, but then again, it's vital to many traditions. So here's the question we want to talk about today is alcohol and body consumption. So we're not going to get into the debate about, you know, and if you're an alcoholic, you know, and you're recovering, then, you know, this may be a trigger episode for you or not. I'm not so sure, but we're just going to put that out there with a grain of salt. But purely speaking, let's talk about what alcohol does in our body. So alcohol does supply energy, but it does not supply nutrition. So it's really what experts and many people call full of empty calories. So again, it supplies energy without nutrition. And it is the only thing that we pretty much consume that does that. The rest of the food or energy that we consume can be broken down into one of the 3 macronutrients. So it's either a protein, a carbohydrate, or a fat. Alcohol is none of those. Alcohol is its own entity, and it's called a sugar alcohol. So the important thing to learn here is, well, there's a number of things. We're going to talk about 5 things actually. But the most important thing I want to tell you right now is that alcohol is the first fuel to be addressed when combined with food. So what does that mean? That means alcohol in our system postpones any type of fat burning that might be possible. So it's not just that it has a certain number of calories or that it doesn't have any carbohydrates. It's the first fuel that needs to be burned. And by fuel, I mean energy intake. And so our body sees alcohol, number one, as a toxin. And when it's on board and it is ingested, the body sees it as a priority of getting rid of it. And so it takes all its efforts on getting rid of the alcohol in our system. And so what that does is it puts fat burning on the back burner. It basically stops fat burning until all of the alcohol has been used up in our body. And so let's quickly talk about macros. So macronutrients, I mentioned them a moment ago. They are protein, carbohydrates, and fats. And they've probably gotten a lot of popular conversations. They have been the topic of many popular conversations surrounding body composition. At least in my lifetime, they have. And so here's the thing. Alcohol supplies almost double the calories gram for gram of protein and carbohydrates. So protein and carbohydrates contain 4 calories per gram. Alcohol contains 7 calories per gram with 0 nutrition, and fat supplies 9 calories per gram. So that just puts it out there. But so alcohol supplies more calories than most of the other macronutrients that we ingest, and it supplies no nutrition. So on the outset here, we're not seeing very many benefits. Now, we may talk about benefits later on, we may not. We know there are some benefits to alcohol, but let's just put that aside for now because that's not really what we're talking about today. So here's the thing. Number one, alcohol supplies more calories than other macronutrients, and it actually is preferentially taken care of in the body first, putting fat burning to a halt when it is present in the body. So number 2, alcohol loosens inhibition. So generally this means that calorie consumption overall is increased when alcohol is on board, because people who have alcohol in their system, there we go with that social lubricant and that little more of a relaxing letdown feeling, which is the reason most people have a glass of wine or whatever it is they're going to indulge in. They tend to have more food because of this loosening up of their brain thinking effect. And so they have more of the wrong food also, and they don't think about it until later when the alcohol is gone. So when the alcohol effect wears off. So alcohol is an appetite stimulant, and it really contributes to cravings, especially fatty foods and salty foods. So it also, being the disinhibitor that it is, affects motivation, and it makes it very harder to stick to your healthy behaviors that you may have worked very hard on cultivating. And so you just keep that in mind. So number 3, let's talk about the damage that alcohol can do physically in our body. So alcohol has damaging effects on not just the liver, but also the stomach and the kidneys. So because it's a product of yeast digestion, it can actually make the stomach have effects on the stomach. So in the stomach, alcohol just being present in the stomach will decrease the efficiency and the rate of digestion. And so this negates a healthy metabolism. So it makes your metabolism more sluggish. And we know that when you have a more sluggish metabolism, you're going to actually store more fat and not burn it. So here's another way that alcohol, because of its effect on the stomach, will slow down your metabolism, causing you to actually store more of the food that you take in as fat because your body is not using it. So we'll save it for another time. And in the meantime, our clothes are getting tighter. So let's talk about our liver. Our liver is our detox organ. And alcohol is destructive to our liver's ability to act as a detoxifier. So partially this is because our liver is very busy trying to get rid of alcohol to detox our body from the alcohol in the system. And so over time, this can really take its toll on one's liver. And so we just have to think about that as a cumulative effect over years and years and years. So, and this is very different depending on your genetic expression and just what your individual makeup is. Some people will be more affected by this. Some people will not. Some people can drink socially and never see the effects of this happen. Others, not so much. But it is something that we have to mention. All right. Next, number 4, we're going to talk about testosterone. And it's not just men who have testosterone. Women have testosterone too, just in smaller amounts. And testosterone on its own has a fat loss effect. So it is what we call an anabolic hormone. It contributes to gains in lean muscle. And this is something we want to support an active metabolism. We want to have lean muscle. So lean muscle is muscle with not a lot of fat. And that's really the ideal body composition that we want. So we know that as women, again, we don't have a lot of testosterone, but this is just a little side note, getting off on a tangent here. If we continue to resistance train to maintain the muscle that we have, we will also produce a little bit of testosterone in our own body, and that will help us with our metabolism. Don't worry, we're not going to be growing a mustache or a beard or hair on our chest just from lifting weights. It takes way more than that. So, but it's always good to keep our body strong is the point here. So let's get back to the effect of alcohol on testosterone. So alcohol lowers testosterone, which in turn lowers our metabolic rate, which in turn makes it much harder for us to burn fat. So that's another thing to keep in mind with why alcohol interferes with an ideal or maybe your ideal body composition. Number 5, appetite. I think you probably know what's coming next here. Alcohol is an appetite stimulant. Yes, it is. In fact, it's pretty interesting. There was a study in Canada that was done. And what the study did was they had people consume alcohol before a meal or a soft drink that had carbohydrates in it. And then they were allowed to eat whatever it was they wanted to eat. And what they found that the people who consumed an alcoholic drink before the meal all consumed more calories than the people who consumed the soft drink with carbohydrates in it. So another study in Denmark studied men, and here's what they were told them: they could eat as much as they wanted to. And again, some of them were given alcohol before the meal, and others were given a soft drink. And it was overwhelmingly the people who had had the alcohol before the meal ate a significant amount of more calories during the meal that followed alcohol than during the meal that followed the soft drink. So that's just a little interesting note to keep in mind. And it's just, I mean, we love our wine. We love, I mean, I alluded to this in our intro episode. I mean, alcohol can be a lovely thing. So let's talk a little bit more. And we're going to get to this at the end a little bit more, but I want to talk a little bit more about absorption and how alcohol is processed. And then we're going to get into, what you may choose to do or not to, what you think is right for you. So at your first drink, about 25% of the alcohol you consume is absorbed into your body directly through your stomach. The rest is absorbed in your small bowel, and it's affected by the amount of food in your stomach. So the more food you have in your stomach, the slower will be the rate of absorption. Um, the more carbonation you have in your stomach, the higher the rate of absorption will be. So this is why some people notice the effects of champagne more than other alcohols, because champagne is carbonated and it actually increases the absorption. The carbonation does. So and then, of course, there's the percent of alcohol that is consumed. If you're consuming a 5% beer versus, a shot of whiskey, which is 40%, obviously the higher the percent is going to also be more, there will be more absorbed. Correct? That's correct. So now, alcohol being processed, 98%, give or take, of the alcohol that is consumed is processed in the liver. All right. The rest is processed through sweat, breathing, and urine. So I always laugh when people say, like, the day after a big, party with a lot of alcohol involved, that they want to do a really big workout to sweat out their alcohol. Well, good luck with that, because it's less than 2%. It's your liver that has to do all the work. I'm sorry to say, and go ahead and do that great workout if you can do it. But you're doing it for a lot of other reasons, not to metabolize the alcohol in your system. And then the other ways are through breathing and through urine. So those ways are actually, pretty ineffective. But if you think about it, I don't know if you've ever been around an alcoholic. They actually kind of smell like alcohol. It kind of oozes out through their skin, through their sweat, and also through their breath. So, if someone actually smells like a distillery, they've probably got a pretty high blood level of alcohol at that point in time in their system. So, no judgment there. That was just an interesting fact. So, speaking of that, let's talk about quick percentages of alcoholic drinks. So beer is generally in the range of 5%. There are some light beers that are less percent. Wine can be anywhere from 11 to 14%, and red wines tend to have a higher percent, more towards the 14 range, and white wines can be in the 11, 12% range. Proof. So whatever proof something is, the actual alcohol percent of that drink is half of it. So if something is 100% proof, it's 50% alcohol. If it's 80 proof, it's 40% alcohol. Generally speaking, gin, rum, vodka, and whiskey are all 40% alcohol. And if you were to look at an ounce of alcohol of any one of those, gin, rum, vodka, or whiskey, the actual alcohol calories, if you're interested to know that, are 64. And I hesitate to mention that because some people might think, well, it's only 64 calories. But let's remember that what's ever in your stomach that you have with that, number one, is going to slow down the absorption of alcohol, which means it's going to stay in your body longer. You're going to eat more in the first place because you have that social lubricant on board, and you're going to have to get rid of the alcohol in your body. That liver's got to do a lot of work to metabolize that alcohol before any of the other food in your system can be metabolized. So just that 64 calories is not really 64 calories. I'm just asking you to think about that as what it really is. Okay. So while I'd love for it only to be 64 calories, the actual effect on our body is much, much different than that. So, okay. So here's the thing. I'm going to tell you, I'm not telling you what to do. And I think you already know by now that my husband and I enjoy wine quite a bit. So what the bottom line here is, what can your mind process? Can your mind process moderation? Can your habits and behaviors sustain a little alcohol every now and then? So I love to go into the fact of behaviors and habits. And my favorite example of this is a story of when I wanted to learn how to play tennis a long, long time ago. I was a mom with 3 little kids. they were like, I don't think my baby was a year old at that time, and she wasn't even my youngest. But anyways, I decided to take tennis lessons because like I need to get out of the house, right? Like I'm with these three kids like all the time. Okay, so I go to the like local recreation department in the place where we were living in Syracuse, New York at the time, and I sign up. I show up on the first day with my little racket, and I'm all excited. And the instructor says, okay, did you come here to learn tennis? And like me, and like it was me, and I literally, I think it was a bunch of like stay at home moms, or just other moms. It was like women like in my wheelhouse at the time. Basically, I would say like 90% of us. Anyways, did you come here to learn tennis? And we're like all nodding our head, like, yeah, we came here to learn tennis. And he goes, well, that's too bad because I don't teach tennis. And I'm like, excuse me. So like, I'm trying to be polite, waiting, like, what is this guy talking about? And he said, I am here to teach you habits. And these are the habits that will make you a better tennis player. So he talked about in the next 6 weeks, we learned about the habit of making the right kind of way to toss the ball in the air to serve. We talked about the habit of anticipating being ready for whether it was going to be a forehand shot or a backhand shot. We talked about the habit of being very mindful of being prepared early for what was coming at us over the net. It was all about habits. And so we cultivated a habit for all of these things, even for anticipating how to hit a shot that's a lob that's coming at us. Every one of these things were habits that we were taught. And he insisted that he was not teaching tennis, he was teaching us habits and behaviors. And so, with regard to your healthy lifestyle and where you put alcohol in that, how it looks best for you is where does it fit in with your habits and behaviors. Again, like many things in life and many variables that we have choices on, there's a spectrum. And where on the spectrum you lie for alcohol and how it fits into your habits is purely individualistic, you know? And so, I mean, I could tell you what mine are, but it doesn't matter. What you need to think about is what's going to work for you. So where on the spectrum are you? You at one end, you might have zero tolerance. You know, and people who are recovering alcoholics know they have zero tolerance for alcohol in their system. And because, you know, one drink will be too much and or one will be not enough and three will be too much. I don't know, I forget how that, but any amount at all in their system will never be enough. And so those people are at one end of the system, and then there's people at the other end of the system. And I think I would think of like my parents in that way. My parents really didn't drink. They might have a sip socially, if they were offered one, to be polite, but other than that, and we kept it in the house, but they didn't ever really drink it. You know, they would, if they were entertaining, they might serve it. But anyways, that's the other end of the spectrum. And I think it's important for us to figure out where we are on this spectrum of alcohol, the ability to have alcohol in our system, and how much of a social lubricant, how much of a disinhibitor is it for you, and how important is it to you, philosophically, to have a certain body composition? You know, are you striving to be a bodybuilder? Do you just want to be happy in your own skin? Do you just want to be healthy enough to do with the activities of daily living, or, you know, whatever it is you like to do, and do well? This is where it's very, very individual. So I ask you to think about, number one, what you know you can handle and what you know you can't. And if you need help with that, of course, you know, you can always reach out. You know, some people may actually need to go to an AA meeting or even some other types of resources to help with that. What is the right level for you? I think I have mine figured out, and I asked you to just take a little bit and think about it, you know, and how important it is to you. Is it a priority for you to have wine at dinner once or twice a week? Or could you care less? You know, would you rather eat dessert? Or, I mean, I'm not asking you to pick, but this is the type of thing we want to talk about. The fact of the matter is that alcohol does affect our body composition in 5 ways, and I'm going to review it here really quickly, right? Alcohol supplies more empty calories than most other macronutrients with no nutrition. That's number 1. Number 2, it is a disinhibitor. It makes our judgment very kind of like, well, anything's okay. A cookie is good. Why not eat the whole box? All right, that's an example. Number 3, it has damaging effects on our stomach, kidneys, and liver. And this has a lot to do with how we process the rest of the food that we take and how we absorb calories or store them as fat. Number 4, alcohol has an effect on our testosterone levels, male or female, and it lowers testosterone, which leads to a lower metabolism, which significantly relates to more fat storage on your body. And number 5, alcohol in itself is an appetite stimulant. So these are the 5 things that alcohol does that affects your body composition. And we're not even going into the well-documented negative effects of alcohol. And also, we are still recognizing the fact that alcohol is a tradition in human socialization, and we are social beings. And whether or not you can handle or how much you want to handle with relationship to what your body composition goals are is extremely unique to you, and it's unique to what your goals are and actually how your body responds. So I hope that this has been helpful to you. I don't know, I find this topic very, very fascinating. I do enjoy wine sometimes. So I'm going to laugh right now because at some point, maybe in a later episode, I'm going to learn how to stop saying but for now, there's a lot of little ums in here. What can I say? I'm new at this. So rookie mistake. But anyways, let's keep going. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. And if you have, please do me a favor and subscribe here. Please go and give me a 5-star rating. It would just mean a lot to me to get this episode up and running and to keep this show up and running, because there's a lot that I have to say and share with the world. And I think that a lot of people are going to want to hear it. So good riddance for today. And this is it for our alcohol and body composition episode. Thank you so much for tuning in and listening. I am super grateful. For any references, visit airhugcommunity.com. And hey, if this episode touched you, please hit subscribe and leave a review. And also consider sharing this on your social media. Grab a screenshot, tag me at Judy Arizosa, and use the hashtag AirHugCommunity so that this podcast can continue to bring you guests and content to enrich your life. And remember that when you enrich the life of others, it comes back to you tenfold. Air hugs to you, my friend. This episode is not intended in any way to diagnose, treat, or address alcohol addiction.